Welcome aboard, applicants. Let's begin the first year law students exam review, June 2021, question number 3. As with all essay questions for the baby bar, we begin with the call of the question, and the call of the question states, with what crimes can Carl reasonably be charged, and what defenses can he reasonably raise? Discuss. 2. With what crimes can Martha reasonably be charged, and with what defenses can she reasonably raise? Discuss. Right here we know that we're dealing with crime, so I'm going to highlight this to show you that we already know our area of law, and that would be criminal law. Exactly right. So with criminal law, we want to put down what our shopping list is. What would that be our shopping list? Murder, structure, theft, crimes against the person, solicitation, conspiracy, attempt, and defenses. We copy this for Martha. Okay, and we also want to make sure that we're formatting our answer correctly too. We're going to do state v. Carl, and down here for Martha, it would be state. Let's see here, okay. State v. Martha. Make sure this font on this is all the same font. Thank you for your patience. Okay, and actually this. Okay, it's all. Make sure it's. There we go. Excellent. There we are. All right, now state v. Martha. Don't forget too that we have to talk about defenses, so we want to make sure to talk about that there's defenses. So Martha's defenses. And we also don't want to forget about Carl. That's Carl's defenses. Okay, excellent. All right, now make sure that we bring this down. And we also want to make sure too that when we deal with our call of the question, we want to type our call of the question identically to how it was given to us. That's why we're just reusing the calls of the question here to save time, but we would type that out for our calls, okay? Excellent. All right, let's bring this down to our second page here. Excellent. All right, now let's start with our question. Carl lived with Martha, Martha's son Sonny, and their dog. One morning, Carl told Martha about his plan to steal from the house of Barry Rich. Carl's plan was to go to Rich's house with Martha and the dog. Carl planned to pretend the dog was lost and pretended he was trying to find the dog's home. Carl planned to let the dog escape into Rich's house. Carl asked Martha to come with him. He wanted her to chase after the dog in Rich's house in order to distract Rich while Carl went to Rich's bedroom to look for jewelry. At first, Martha told Carl she would not help. Carl then looked at her and said, "You'd better do what I say or Sonny is going to be badly hurt." In response, Martha agreed to help Carl. That afternoon, Carl and Martha went to Rich's house with the dog. When Rich opened the door, Carl let the dog run into the house. As planned, Carl ran after the dog and distracted Rich while Carl went to the bedroom. In the bedroom, Carl found a valuable diamond ring and put it into his pocket, or in his pocket. The ring is worth $5,000. While Carl was in the bedroom, the dog ran past Rich and knocked him down. Rich hit his head on a table and died. So now that we have a full understanding of a big picture perspective of our question, we can now start eliminating things and spotting things in terms of issues in our call, or excuse me, in our question. So right now we know that whenever we see somebody dying in a criminal law hypo, that we're thinking homicide. Right now we don't know exactly who to claim, or that is responsible for the homicide, but we do have a homicide spotted here right off the bat. Now Carl lived with Martha's son Sonny, and their dog. One morning, Carl told Martha about his plan to steal from the house of Barry Rich. Now, this being right here, this telling Martha about his plan to steal from the house of Barry Rich, it starts to sound like you have solicitation on Carl's part, but remember, Carl hasn't encouraged or incited or in any way promoted the idea in Martha's mind that Martha should go along with Carl's idea, or in that sense, for solicitation. Now, Carl's plan was to go to Rich's house with Martha and the dog. Now, Carl planned to pretend the dog was lost and pretended he was trying to find the dog's home. Carl planned to let the dog escape into Rich's house. This is all part of that aspect about what was going on in Carl's mind and in his plan, because these will actually come into fruition later for different elements, okay, of our as we spot issues. Carl asked Martha to come with him. Right here, there we go. Click. We have a solicitation on Carl's part. So let's come down here and spot that. Okay. Excellent. And then we want to make sure to talk about merger, and possibly there's going to be a potential conspiracy here. We'll see. He wanted her to chase after the dog in Rich's house in order to distract Rich, while Carl went to Rich's bedroom to look for jewelry. At first, Martha told Carl she would not help. So this is the aspect about Martha's possible defense later on of withdrawal. So we want to make sure to possibly talk about that. Okay, but wait a minute here. What happens in our question? Let's come back and take a look. Right here. At first, Martha told Carl that she would not help. Right here. There's that argument we talked about. Carl then looked at her and said, "You better do what I say, or Sonny is going to be badly hurt." Well, what is this? Absolutely correct. This is duress. We want to make sure to spot that here, down under defense for Martha. Withdrawal. Okay. And then, in response, Martha agreed to help Carl. Now, this is the aspect now. What has Martha committed here? A conspiracy. So now we have conspiracy for both Carl and Martha. Right here. Now, make sure we spot this. And we're highlighting these so that we know which facts we're going to use for what issue. Okay? That afternoon, Carl and Martha went to Rich's house with the dog. So I now know that right here. What was it? What does it say that Carl told Martha to help him do. Uh, okay. At first, excuse me. Let me come back here and read this. Thank you. Okay. Asked Martha to come and help him. So we want to make sure that in Martha's situation, we're also bringing up the additional crime of accomplice liability. And we also want to make sure that we don't forget too that both of these people are working as accomplices as well. So we want to throw that in, okay? And then Pinkerton's rule for both down here. Excellent. Okay. And that afternoon, Carl and Martha went to Rich's house with the dog. When Rich opened the door, Carl let the dog run into the house. Now, this is the aspect too. What happens at this point? And what's Rich's plan here? Rich's plan is to steal from the house of Barry Rich. Okay, so but in order to carry that out, he has to carry out a burglary. Okay, and then what is the objective of that burglary? The felony therein, absolutely larceny. Okay, now we want to make sure we talk too down here underneath Martha for burglary as well. Remember here, we're not just talking about just any. Remember, burglary comes in two flavors. We got modern law burglary, or should common law burglary and modern law burglary. We want to make sure that we talk about each one of those. And the one thing that we're going to be bringing up here, we're going to spot this about the bedroom. So when Rich opened the door, Carl let the dog run into the house. There is your entry. Okay, so trespasser breaking and entering dwelling house of another at night with the intent to commit a felony therein. And that's what we have in terms of the burglary here. That breaking and entry, the breaking happened when Rich opened the door. the entry happened when Carl let the dog run into the house. Now remember, the aspect too is even though Rich opened the door, was Rich essentially giving permission to let Carl let the dog run into the house? No. So that was a trespassory breaking and entering. As planned, though, the argument could be made, though, that Rich opened the door, so the possible breaking aspect may be missing. That's what we might have to go to modern law, but most likely we'll have common law. As planned, Martha ran after the dog and distracted Rich. Now, this is the aspect of accomplice liability that Martha is kind of running the interference for Carl. Now, and distracting Rich, and then while Carl went into the bedroom. And now into the bedroom. Now this is where we went through the front door now into the bedroom. We want to make sure we talk about the inner door doctrine here, which is a very important term. Okay, and then in the bedroom, Carl found a valuable diamond ring and put it in his pocket. There's your larceny kicking in right at this point. Larceny for the diamond ring. Okay, and then put it into his pocket. We know at that point putting it into his pocket is intent to permanently deprive. And not only that, he picked it up, he found it, and he picked it up, which means we got asportation. So trespassory, the taking and carrying personal property with the intent to permanently deprive the owner thereof. All elements are met there. The ring is worth $5,000, and that also too will play into the value of the ring, that the ring's value. Okay, $5,000. While Carl was in the bedroom, the dog ran past Rich and knocked him down. Now, this is the aspect too. Even though we may have a battery here, okay, battery technically would merge into this aspect, the further sentence. Rich hit his head on a table and died. So, but we want to make sure we talk about it, okay, just in a smaller sense. So, battery. So, it's basically unjustified force on another's person. And then Rich hit his head on the table and died. So this is where we now talk about our meat and potatoes issue, which would be murder, homicide, actual cause, proximate cause, malice aforethought. And then we want to make sure on a malice aforethought that we're bringing about, we're talking about intent to kill, felony murder rule, intent to cause serious bodily harm, and the felony, sorry, not the felony, excuse me, the depraved heart murder. Okay. Then we want to make, there wasn't necessarily a voluntary, we want to make sure not to forget about talking about manslaughter. But manslaughter comes in two versions. We got voluntary manslaughter and involuntary manslaughter. The voluntary manslaughter does not seem to be present here. We don't have a heat of passion argument. We don't have any particular imperfect self-defenses or any of those things that might bring about voluntary manslaughter. We do have in our possible argument a mitigating factor for involuntary manslaughter. And then at that point, I think we've finished out our template. So we've made sure we've talked about murder. We've talked about structure. We talked about the theft. With structure, we talked about common law, modern law, Berg. Theft for the larceny. Crimes against the person, we bring that up here for the battery when the dog ran past Rich, or Barry Rich. And then down here, solicitation conspiracy, we already talked about that. There were no attempt aspects. And the defenses, we got to make sure we don't forget to talk about that. That's what right here, Carl's defenses. So copy and paste this down here. Cut up there. Okay, right here. Let me bring this down. The defenses. It doesn't appear that Carl has any defenses that I can see. Trying to think here if we're dealing with, like, I don't see anything. Well, I'll have to put a bookmark there, but for right now I don't see any defenses for Carl. So no defenses. Now, coming down now for Martha, we have State v. Martha, that the conspiracy for her agreement. Remember, even though she was on the fence in terms of whether or not she was going to go along with Carl, she ultimately did. And that's what makes the agreement. We have the overt act in furtherance, which is when she went there to Barry Rich's house. And then we have the co-conspiratorial liability that at that point kicks in. Now, the accomplice liability. Now, the argument, though, that Martha could raise concerning her agreement is that she only agreed within this aspect concerning duress. Okay, and so but the argument, the public policy argument, might kick in here and say, should she have let Carl harm Sonny at the cost of not going with Carl to the criminal to the crime scene and committing the crime? Well, that's the dispute right there. Now, accomplice liability for her participation in the crime, as also a possible accessory before the fact, but mainly just accomplice liability for her participation as a principal in the second degree. And then Pinkerton's rule for all the actions that took place that Carl did inside of Barry Rich's house. And then down here we've got we talked about the defenses. The withdrawal defense. Remember, withdrawal has two versions. We got common law and modern law. Remember, the aspect concerning common law, the only requirement is renunciation. Modern law, renunciation plus a action to thwart the crime or the criminal objective. And down up here we read that even though she said that she would not help, she ultimately helped. Even under the common law, that might be enough, but under modern law, no, because she did not act to thwart the crime in any way. So she would still be on the hook under modern law for the crimes after the conspiracy was completed. Remember, even if withdrawal kicks in, she's still liable for the conspiracy. It's just that everything past the conspiracy she wouldn't be. Under duress, though, we're looking at, was her will to make a decision, well, was her will to make a decision by physical force, mental force, or emotional force, or economic force, suspended? In other words, she could not make a free will decision, and that's an excellent argument to make, because up here, this, you better do what I say or Sonny is going to be badly hurt. Well, that aspect too is, now that I'm seeing this again, you could almost argue that uh, this is a future kind of threat, but still, uh, Carl, this is the thing about it is, Sonny is who? Sonny is Martha's son. So this aspect is a definite, at least mental, if not physical, force upon Martha's free will decision making ability. Okay, for duress argument. We also too, we could almost argue this just in a, I don't want to reach too far for any issues, but maybe Carl is liable for assault here. I just want to put this as an asterisk here, down here, uh, just an asterisk right here. An assault against Martha, but it's just an idea. We might look at that. Okay, now, but remember, words alone are not enough, so that may not work. Okay, but those kind of things, when you're going through issue spotting, you want to make sure to work through your black letter law element by element, and looking at those outlines that you have from memory and from review classes, so you work through each one and every one of those elements to ask yourself, is this an assault? Well, we'll look at here. Words are not enough, okay? But the presentability argument may be there. But the argument is, again, the reason why Carl would not be liable for the assault upon Martha would be that the words are not enough, okay? Now, So I look at all this now, and I think I'll put a bookmark right here. We might come back and talk about this at a later point, and even maybe restart it and do a further analysis in the elements. So I thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you had a great time reviewing this, and it was an enriching experience. Thank you very much, and God bless.